Hi, Michelle. I'm super glad we have you here today. Can you tell me more about yourself and 2140?
Thanks for having me. My name is Michelle, as you know. I joined ERA in 2021. And then ERA, as you might know, is a blockchain venture studio. Basically, what we do is we help startups scale their businesses from 0 to 100. So the problem we notice and we observe in the Web3 ecosystem is there's a shortage of experts that actually know how to bootstrap and deploy a project and see it through to success. And that's where we come in. We deploy our resources, which includes tech, strategy, marketing, the economic parts of the business, and also like the game economic design for play and earn blockchain-based games.
Okay, nice. And within 2140, you have like a very specific field, which is tokenomics. You're like a tokenomics expert.
Yeah.
You began tokenomics like a few years ago, like 3 or 4. That is impressive.
Yeah, well, I've been very interested in token economies, basically how crypto projects work in terms of the token supply. As you know, like crypto projects represent token supply. It's been something of interest to me. I started 4 years ago just on my own, being passionate about the ecosystem, reading the white papers of Bitcoin, of Ethereum, which are like the first projects that you know. And that's how I got started with tokenomics.
And for our listeners, what is tokenomics?
So tokenomics comes from two words, token and economics. The token aspect represents crypto token digital assets, as you might know. Economics is the basic economics, the study of inflation, supply and demand of commodities, basically. So when we say tokenomics, it's actually the study of the inflation, supply and demand of crypto tokens and the testing the systems to see if it's sustainable in the long run, if it's able to survive the entrance of users and the exit of users with time in the ecosystem.
And that's an issue in Web3.
Yeah, it's a very big issue, actually. It's very challenging because what we see is a crypto project gets bootstrapped, you have lots of interest, you see a very huge increase in price, and suddenly it just starts to die off gradually. There's a sell-off. And that's because you have too much tokens in the ecosystem with very low utility that would move users to actually hold that token. So basically, they don't see any value in this token. It's just something to get in quick, make some money, and get out. So the idea of tokenomics is to design sustainable ecosystems that are resilient to huge buys and huge sells from different personas and different actors that you would definitely have in your ecosystem. So it's really important to pay attention to this part of your project.
How do you do it?
Well, there are so many ways to go about it, but the starting point of any tokenomics study is to understand the business. You need to know what the model the business is trying to create, what problem it's trying to solve. When you understand this, then you're able to create personas and actors that would be in your ecosystem. When you understand this, then you need to also create the utilities for your token. So what is the function of my token in this ecosystem? Is it a reward token? Is it a gaming token? Is it a governance token? Or it could be any kind of tokens that suit your needs. Now, when you understand these needs and you understand the actors in your ecosystem, the next step is to understand the cost of developing this project in the long run. Then you can create allocations for these different parts of your project. Now, when it comes to understanding the fair value of your token, that's a different topic entirely, because the fair value of your token would come from the utilities that you create for your token and the traction you're able to create on your platform. So you could create a very amazing project right now, very good idea, and you end up not attracting enough users to your platform. But you have a tokenomic design that has a constant supply. So you keep supplying tokens to the market, but you don't have enough users that are going to use these tokens. What happens? That means the average user is going to have a huge amount of tokens, but there is nothing to do with it. So what happens? The price starts to drop because they start to sell off the token. It has no value. There's no one using this token. So in the end, while it's important to pay attention to your tokenomics, it's also important to pay attention to your business model and ensure that you create value first for your community. And then naturally, the token is going to gain value as well.
Super interesting. It's like creating a startup.
Definitely. It's synonymous to creating a startup, yeah.
Okay, and yeah, for sure, we need more utility, and we need to get rid of all the stupid things we've seen for years in the ecosystem. But yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. How do you design a tokenomics? Is it a paper? Is it like a scheme? How do you model this?
Good. So as I said earlier, once you understand the different actors in your ecosystem, the next thing you do is to define your allocation. So how many tokens will go to the founders? Usually there's a benchmark in the market and in the industry, depending on what niche you're going to. If it's the gaming niche, if it's a decentralized storage, if it's metaverse, you have benchmarks for how much the founders take and the advisors. Then the project owners would kind of project how much they would need for development, for marketing, and have an allocation for that. Now, for the ecosystem that you're creating, because you have actors in that ecosystem, these tokens, we have to design the inputs and the outputs. That's what we call token sinks and token faucets. So, what avenues do we create in the economy that ensures that some tokens go out of the system and new tokens come in? So, it creates a cycle, right? Then you also have to ask yourself, is my token deflationary? Does it have a fixed supply? Or is it inflationary? Take, for example, Bitcoin. Bitcoin has a fixed supply, right? And the last Bitcoin, as you might know, will be mined in 2140. So when you design an economy and you know that, okay, my token is going to be fixed, it's going to be a reward token, then we we have different tools that we use for that. We could design it with Excel. We could model a token economy with machinations, which is a very good tool for modeling Web3 ecosystems, mostly in the gaming aspects. Now, the idea is to create a model. It could be an Excel model or a machinations model that we can run over a course of 5 years, because we create our simulations over a course of 5 to 7 years, during which the tokens will be distributed. And then we can do a stress test, flood the system with lots of buy transactions and see if the system holds up. Flood the system with lots of sell transactions while you're having lots of tokens coming into the system as well. So you're inflating your ecosystem and you're sending lots of transactions, and you see how it holds up. And then you're doing the reverse. So this is how we model tokenomics. But it's kind of interesting because most people today, when you tell them tokenomics, the idea for them about tokenomics is, oh, I create an allocation, founders 10%, advisors 20%, everything adds up to 100%. That's my tokenomics. No, that's not. Tokenomics is way deeper than that. You need to know, how much tokens am I going to have in year one in the system? Are there avenues to suck out tokens from the economy when it becomes too much, when there's an overinflation of tokens? How do I ensure that I can manage my system and suck out more tokens? These are key control levers and drivers that you need to put in your system to ensure that when things start to go south, there's always a control button, something that you can kick in place to make sure things don't go too bad.
Okay,
Yeah.
so your job is like an economic, academic researcher job. Like you have all your database and you're crafting the model and making simulations. It's like you have to be really good at mathematics.
Well, if you want to go into tokenomics, you definitely need to have a basis in mathematics, especially statistics. But generally, I would say anyone with a strong scientific background, so it could be mathematics, chemistry, physics, economics, it could be anything, or it could be any engineering background as well. You could actually go into tokenomics. Now, what kind of skills do you need to go into tokenomics? Like, how am I able to cope in this world of tokenomics? Well, it's basic statistics and understanding the basic economics 101, the law of supply and demand. Once you understand these two things, the law of supply and demand, you can expand this concept to however big you want to. Now, how does maths and statistics help you? Well, it helps you put things into perspective. You should be good with numbers. You should, be able to calculate numbers on the fly and, make complex calculation, understand percentages, how they work, be able to project and make models. These are key skills that you need to start off with tokenomics. But the first thing you need to do is to have a passion. Because without a passion, you're like a robot trying to do stuff. You would hardly progress and learn
Just
more.
apply what you've learned.
Exactly. You would apply what you know already. You wouldn't really progress. Because at some point, tokenomics goes into the research phase where you stop dealing with models, but you start creating models, not mathematical models with formulas and whatever, but you're trying to create structures, token structures that would help improve and optimize the token distribution models we have today. Because what we have today is mostly we sell tokens to to investors, and it's vested for 6 months, and after that there's a linear release, right? We came up with a new idea that says, what if we have NFTs with tokens nested in them? So this is the job of a tokenomics. You're not just designing tokenomics for projects. You're also trying to improve the current models that we have out there. So the idea of having token nested NFTs is that you sell tokens to investors, but you do not give them tokens. You give them NFTs, and in these NFTs, you have tokens that are locked on them. So hence, an investor is not tied to your project. If the vesting period is 6 months and he believes, okay, I can't wait 6 months, he can sell his NFT to another investor at a discount, at the market rate, or at a premium. It doesn't matter. Now that investor knows that according to the smart contract, I'm going to receive these tokens at this time, at this time. Then you start to create a secondary market for the sale of NFTs. So it's very dynamic. We need to be innovative and think outside the box. How do we improve the status quo? And that's the most important question we're here to answer.
Sure. So about the NFT containing all the tokens vested. So in your opinion, that these NFT shouldn't be transferable to avoid a secondary market?
Oh, the NFTs are transferable. That's the idea of creating NFTs that...
you say we should create SBT for this kind of investment.
No. Soul-bound tokens are different from the NFTs I talked about. Sure. The NFTs I talked about are token-nested NFTs. It doesn't exist out there. I think there's a project that tried to develop something like that, but it didn't scale. But it's a very promising idea. It's very different from soul-bound NFTs. Now, these NFTs are transferable, but the entire idea is that in its metadata, like you have tokens that are assigned to that NFT. So it grants the holder of that NFT access to those tokens once the release schedule that has been programmed in the smart contract is reached, right? Okay. Now, the advantage it gives to investors is if I buy this NFT at the investment phase, but I decide after 3 months that I want to pull out of this investment, I'm not interested anymore. But the vesting period is 10 months.
You can send...
Right? I can sell my NFT for fiat to another investor who is interested in taking my place.
Okay.
And he's sure, because he might not have the opportunity to be part of the private sale at a discount. So I could sell these NFTs to him at a premium, at a small premium, or at a discount if I'm, so desperate to get my money back, if I need the money for something else. Or if I'm patient, I can sell at a premium or at the market price. So indirectly, you're creating a secondary market based on your tokens. And this could become a very dynamic market. It could blow up, because then you might have market makers trying to come into your ecosystem, trying to propose to you, I can help create liquidity for these NFTs. So there are different ways to think about it, and I think that's the job of every tokenomist.
Okay, yes, there's a lot of parameters, and what you're saying is super interesting, because I'm advisor on a project and just received like a month ago an NFT with the token vested on the NFT, and I didn't start with the idea of but I can resell the NFT. So that's mind-blowing.
So you can resell the NFT if the project makes it possible for you to resell it, if they create a secondary market for it. If it's an ERC20 NFT, you could be listed on OpenSea or LooksRare, one of the popular NFT exchanges, and then you can sell it. So the issue you will have here is creating liquidity. If it's a project that's not popular, then the NFT won't be known. So even if you list it, you might not get a buyer. Right, so this would be more adequate for projects that succeed in scaling and able to create that
offer and demand for sure.
Exactly.
And how do you train? How do you improve your skills as a tokenomist?
Oh well, I think it's not just about a tokenomist. I think for every professional who wants to improve in their career and keep growing, you need to keep an open mind. I think there is no end to the cycle of learning, and you really have to be on your feet. So for me, I feel like I'm doing something that comes to me naturally. I have a natural interest for it. So even when I'm bored, I'm reading articles on NFTs or just checking up what's happening in the Web3 space, or looking at tweets from people that I follow in the Web3 ecosystem. I think that's the best way for you to train yourself. And then when it comes to the other aspects, you need to be analytical, because there are two sides to it. Having an interest, having a passion, reading up projects, reading up white papers, and understanding the current trend in the market. The other part is developing your problem-solving skills, your analytical skills. There you just have to practice. try out new tools. I use Excel, I use machinations. You could try out Python. I've used Python in the past,
Okay.
and always try to think outside the box. When you see a model, the first question you ask is, how can I improve this model? Are there parameters I can tweak? Is there like a new constant? Is there something I can introduce that's going to help me, improve the system? So yeah, this is how I feel you can actually up your game.
Okay, but is there some resources? I don't know, a Tokenomist Academy, or is it just like you read the white paper, Bitcoin, Ethereum, or the other, and you just talk with people and try to make some to work on some project and then improve like this. So it's like because it's very specific
Yeah.
as a market.
Yeah, it's very specific. Well, I personally, so this is a very personal opinion. Maybe because I started out as somebody who had passion for tokenomics, but I don't believe in getting a formal education in tokenomics. What I believe is you having a solid background, a solid mathematical background, or statistics, or economics, or finance, then it's very easy to segue into tokenomics. So I wouldn't say that you need this training to become a tokenomist. I would say you need to have that interest and you need to have a strong base. Once you have a strong base, I mean, the sky is the limit. You can always learn whatever you want to learn. And that's why being a tokenomist, it's not, how would I say, you don't need to have a degree or a master's or a PhD, but you need to be grounded in the basics.
Okay.
So yeah.
And how can the founders improve their skills in tokenomics? Because, okay, so you're working on big project that needs a specialist, but maybe there are some cases where you don't need someone as trained as you are, and maybe the founders, they can improve their game.
Okay, well, you have lots of projects that are not, they don't need that much dedication when it comes to tokenomics. So you have this projects that do reflectionary rewards, so you have this buy and sell tax, and then you just have they create like an inflated supply and they tell you we burn 50%. So it's the founders that are creating this tokenomics. It's not difficult. It's more like a Ponzinomics. It's more like a Ponzi scheme. Yeah, it's true, because it's first come first serve. Because the token, I mean, you create. So what they do is this: you create a liquidity pool, right? And you can actually set the price of your token in the liquidity pool. Now, the supply of this token is very low. It's a first come, first serve basis. You hold a very huge supply and you have a small liquidity pool. Now, new entrants here of this project, oh, it's going viral. They start buying. They're putting money in the liquidity pool, right? They're putting Ethereum, fiat, and whatever, and they're taking out this token. And the founders who control 5-10%, they're just waiting for people to keep buying and buying and buying and buying. So the liquidity pool keeps getting bigger, right? And what happens when they feel like, yeah, I think we've made enough money, then they do a rug pull.
Yeah.
Either they take out the liquidity or they sell the tokens that they own. And then you see the long red candle on the screen. So,
I've seen this
so there are lots of projects that wouldn't require the founders actually trying to get a professional tokenomics, because you have lots of projects that are based on reward tokens. You can't mistake a reward. Exactly, they're not really long-term projects.
Okay.
These projects wouldn't be on the horizon in the next 3 to 5 years. But what we work on at Era are projects that will be here in the next 10, 15 years. We're looking long-term, and that's why we're very selective when we choose projects that we associate with.
Okay, so just before talking more about Era, so you would recommend, if you have like a long-term vision, to work with a tokenomist specialist?
Oh, I mean, definitely. I mean, this is one indispensable part of your project. So there's a tokenomics part, then designing the ecosystem, because we work mostly with P2E games, NFT projects, metaverse projects. We design the ecosystem and the money flow. When I say money flow, I mean the token flow, because it's the tokens are project dependent. So we design the money flow in your ecosystem. Now we take into consideration what your ecosystem is doing as well. So in the case of Napster, for example, it's a music project, right? Where you buy music artist cards and then you play on leaderboards and you're scored based on the real life performance of these artists. Now, what we did for this project is to first design a scoring system, because it's never been done. So we designed that. And then next we we're able to estimate the number of users. We projected the number of users, and based on this number, we're able to estimate the number of cards that will be needed to play this game in the next year, in the next 2 years, in the next 3 years. Based on that, we could estimate the revenue we get from the platform. We can also estimate how much we can give back to the players as rewards. Now, these rewards going back to the players, it's an inflation in the token because we're giving them rewards in the token, right? So that's where the game economic part comes into play. So you see, the tokenomics and the game economics are quite related because you design first your tokenomics, then you take your allocation that's related to your ecosystem, and then you design the flow of money for that ecosystem. And bearing in mind that for your other
I see,
allocations, you need to pay attention and make sure that the distribution of those tokens, because those tokens are not for the ecosystem, it's for development, team, founders. You need to make sure that those tokens do not add unnecessary inflation to the market.
Okay, I see. So now let's talk more about ERA 2140.
Okay.
What's your role within ERA? And another question as well. How long does it take to like work with a project on tokenomics?
Okay, so my role at ERA, like I'm the head of ERA Intelligence. So ERA Intelligence carries out studies, benchmarks on markets, models for tokenomics, game economics, research on Web3 tools for automation, for productivity, and also we design tokenomics for projects. And to go further, we help projects create their resource base when it comes to the white paper, the websites, the pitch deck, and whatever resources and materials they need, to launch the projects. And the key part that we do, the most important part, is the tokenomics and the game economics design that we do for projects. For an average project, the tokenomics part, it would depend a lot on the feedback we get from the owners of the project because they send us a doc. We review the doc, we put our comments and remarks, and we send it back to them for feedback. We need to understand exactly what they're doing. Once we get this information, it takes about 2 weeks to prepare the tokenomics.
2 weeks full time.
2 weeks full time for the tokenomics, but you should take into account that during these 4 weeks, there's
Yeah,
a back and forth with
right.
the client.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. With the startup. I mean, when it comes to game economics, it's really difficult to put a timeline on game economics because this is quite extensive and it's very subjective and would depend a lot on the projects. For example, for Napsters, the game economic design was done under 3 months.
Okay.
But guess what? It's been almost a year. It's been almost 6 months since we started working on Napsters, and we're still tweaking the game economics. Because you design a model, you design a system. It's not been battle tested, right? Then you deploy your product. You have to monitor that system to make sure it performs as you expect it to.
Yes.
Right? Exactly. So in the end, you'd see a bug here or there, and you say, I have to tweak the system to make it better. And then you're going to have a version 2 of the scoring model, because the idea of deploying a project is to keep improving the project. So I'm very sure in the next couple of months, in the next year, we'd have to improve the current system to a second version, and probably a third version and a fourth.
Lots of iterations.
Exactly, lots of iterations, because the idea is that we're going to keep improving because you have more people coming into your ecosystem. So your system might be resilient with 1,000 users. Is it going to behave the same way with 50,000? So
sure.
these are questions you take into account.
Yeah. Okay, super interesting. And can you mention specific projects you're working on right now?
Okay, well, right now I'm working on a couple of projects. I'm working on Napsters, I'm working on Polyland, and I'm working on Overly. And that's an especially interesting one. So Overly, it's a fantasy rugby sports. Basically, it's a card collecting game where you collect cards for real rugby players, and then you play on a leaderboard. Then we also have accessory cards, resource cards, and booster cards that you can, match with your player cards to increase your score. So you have different players trying to create the best team and the best deck to be ahead of the leaderboard. That's very interesting because we were able to secure a 9-year official license of the French Rugby League, and that gives our users exclusive access to enhanced gameplay in the rugby fantasy world. That's very interesting also because we have experience in this already. We already have a base of about 30,000 users, and now we're going from Web 2 to full Web 3. But the way we're designing the ecosystem, our users would have a seamless experience. So if you're Web3 native, you're Web2 native, you're Web2, Web3 hybrid, the platform is made for you. You wouldn't have to bother about creating your wallets. It's basically you're going there for the gameplay. So we designed the gameplay in a way that we took into consideration the players first, to give them an immersive experience. Now, in our agreements, in the contracts that we signed with the Ligue Nationale Française, the idea was to help these clubs generate revenue. So we sell player cards on the primary and secondary markets, and the revenue we get from both markets is shared between the clubs. A part is sent back to the revenue pool to reward players, and a part to the creators of the project. That's us. So it's a very interesting project we're currently working on, and we're very positive that it's going to be a bang.
Cool. Yeah. And one last question, because you have to go after. What's for you the future of Web3?
Oh, that's a very difficult question
yes, for the last one,
ask.
I'm not so kind.
Because I don't know how far I'm allowed to fantasize, but it's not really a fantasy. The truth is, Web3 is the next iteration of the internet. Like I said once, same as the metaverse. I think they're very interconnected. But I think we'd always have Web2. Web2 is here to stay. I mean, no one can argue that. There are lots of countries that have not been exposed to Web3 yet. But Web3 is taking the world by storm. And it's going to have a huge impact in developing countries that have restricted access to banking services, telephone services, and internet services as well. Web3 is here to change that. When it comes to the world economy, I think we'll start seeing standalone virtual economies. So when I say standalone, it has no connection to the real world. So imagine you creating a business in the metaverse. Sorry, a company, a startup in the metaverse. Your services are services designed for users of the metaverse. The money you receive your money in cryptocurrencies. And every activity is done in the metaverse. Your employees would wake up in the morning, they will connect to their computer, and they're working in the metaverse. You're either creating items here, or you're reselling items, or you're running a shop where people can exchange NFTs of any kind, not really OpenSea or a huge exchange. Now, the bottleneck is going to be when it comes to regulation. How is this going to be seen by traditional governments? Now, we see what's happening with the inflation of currencies all around the world. The more traditional currencies inflate, the more Bitcoin gains value.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And the more they hate Bitcoin.
Exactly. And the more they hate Bitcoin. But it's not really hate. It's more like trying to protect the interests of your country. So the question is, what is going to be the solution to the current inflation? People who believe in crypto, and by extension Web3, they believe that in the future, we're going to have a decentralized economy. And I actually believe that to some extent, but take into account that regulations would always come into play, and at some point would have sovereign cryptocurrencies as well. Yeah. So the future is going to be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's going to be interesting. But I believe we're going to have standalone economies at some point.
Okay, super interesting. Mishael, thank you very much. We are at the end of this interview.
Yeah.
When can we follow you?
Where?
Sorry.
Where? You can follow me on Twitter.
Okay.
My handle is Stanley Mish. That's STANLEY MISH. On LinkedIn, my name Mishael Stanley. On Instagram as well. It's Mishivos. That's a very funny name, actually. But it's MISHYVOUZ. And I don't have a TikTok.
Okay. It's okay. You gave free accounts.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank
you. It was
you.
a great pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, it was a pleasure too.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Have a good day.